back on a live feed. We have exited executive session for the reasons stated on 8B on today's agenda, which was moved up in between items 5 and 6. The executive session was held for the reasons stated on item 8B. No official action or decisions were discussed, so I'll turn it over to Mr. Board President to hold a vote to exit executive session.
And do we need a new motion for that to start?
A motion and a vote, I apologize.
Okay, is there a motion?
Yeah, Mayor Dixon, I'll move we come out of executive session.
Second.
Great, and if we could have a roll call vote, we just go around?
Aye.
Oh, thank you.
Mayor Dixon, aye.
Doris Ralston, aye.
Vice President Salt, aye.
President Barnett, aye.
Dave Donaldson, aye.
Commissioner Nelson, aye.
Dr.
Deborah
Chan?
Chan, aye.
And Commissioner Geithner voted aye. Okay, passes unanimously.
We've now exited executive session.
And
I
then
believe
we
the
need to
board is going to
recess.
take a 15 to 20 minute recess at this point.
We'll take a 5-minute recess. And so everyone can come back in. Okay, thank you. started again. I think we're back on the clock. So, Lauren, take us away with the first finance and budget update of the year.
Thank you. So we're going to start with looking at final preliminary results for 2025. And I say preliminary because it's really not final until our audit is complete and our financial statements are prepared. So there may be some movement, probably not too much, but just want to note that it's still preliminary. For our revenue, the total did come in lower than budgeted, but we had been talking about that throughout the year. Our LPHA funding was cut mid-year for our state contract, and that was anticipated. Our grants did come in about $800,000 less than planned for the year, and a lot of that was due to vacancy savings for our staff because those are reimbursement based, but we had also predicted that coming in lower. Our licenses, fees, and permits for the year came in about $500,000 over budget, and we had also anticipated that, and that was due to improved processes, increased fees, et cetera. Our Medicaid fees and insurance came in about as expected. Interest income was lower than budgeted, but we also discussed that previously and anticipated that. So though our revenues came in lower than budgeted, we also made up for that in cost savings. So for the year, our personnel was under budget by almost $1 million, and that was an accumulation of savings throughout the year from FTE evaluations. And as you know, we ended the year with quite a few less personnel than we started the year, so that's reflected here. Our operating budget also came in quite a bit lower than budgeted, and a big part of that was the not having a need to utilize our emergency funds that we had budgeted for. It's a big cost savings there, and then just overall evaluation of training and travel and operating expenses like cell phones and internet, et cetera, led to almost $800,000 in savings in operating. So for 2025, we had budgeted being over and using almost $970,000 of fund balance. But we ended the year with about $333,000 positive fund balance, so contributing to the fund balance. And I do have just a note at the bottom of what our preliminary fund balance percentage will be as a result of that, and we can do an update later. But so it is higher than our policy, but that's not a bad position for us to be in. Do we have any questions or things I can address for 2025?
And if I could just share, as we look at this as well, I would like to remind the board that we are moving forward with the vehicle purchases that were approved. So there will be a reduction that will balance some of this addition to the fund balance. And as we have been focusing on budget and setting the agency up for sustainability moving forward, part of our strategy around FTE and managing restructure through attrition did contribute as well to building our fund balance this year. However, I do think that sets us up well for the future with more sustainability long-term. So although we do have a substantial fund balance and we are adding to it, I think the long-term sustainable staffing is an important balance to have here in our budget moving forward.
Any questions on this part? Go ahead, please.
A quick comment. Thank you for that explanation. I think that's super important. And one of the things I know we've kind of talked about a little bit is for us to be thoughtful of, what other capital needs are ongoing. So I know we look forward to continuing that conversation and making sure that we are balancing out what is happening there. I know at the county we have undergone a lot of new asset management strategy. And so just thinking through that and knowing that we have that money there, I think is fantastic so that we can make sure we're taking care of all those capital assets, and just look forward to hearing more from you about what those areas are. Thank you.
Anything else on this part? Okay, go ahead and continue, please.
Okay, so then next we're going to talk about results for February 2026, and just moving beyond January, because this is cumulative information, so it just felt better to talk about the most recent period since it is cumulative to date. I will also say that this is preliminary because this meeting is a little early in the month, and so our accounting staff haven't had time to fully close February. So results actually may improve after this, but you'll get an update on that next month. But just note it's preliminary also. Our El Paso County funding is a determined allocation each year, and we receive that in increments each month. So it's a consistent revenue source each month, the same allocation, so that is expected to come through as budgeted. Excuse me. Our state LPHA funding is actually distributed quarterly, so that's why you see a $0 amount for the year to date so far. So we will actually receive 3 months worth in March, but right now expected to come in as budgeted for the year. Also, our program-specific grants are reimbursement-based, so that's based on actual expenses and then reimbursements we've received for our grants. And we do have some personnel savings so far this year, so those are a little bit low, but we'll continue to monitor that throughout the year. And again, it's offset by our expenses, so our expenses are also lower. Licenses, fees, and permits is front-loaded for the year, so we receive $1 million, give or take, in January each year for our restaurant fees. Can't remember the acronym right now, but our RFE program, it's an annual fee, and so we receive that front-loaded in January. So the dollar amount may seem high, but that will level off throughout the year, and will come in right now as expected. Medicaid fees and insurance are experiencing a slow reimbursement rate right now because there was a system upgrade on the Medicaid side. They updated their system, and so we weren't able to process reimbursements. So we hope that that will catch up as they get their system going. So we'll just continue to monitor that. Interest income is coming in as expected also. So year to date so far, we're about $4.7 million in revenue through February. And then for expenditures, our personnel is a little bit under where we'd expect to be at this time because we do have some vacancy savings. And then operating will continue to monitor. And then, as Deanne just mentioned, we do have capital budgeted for 2026 for our OWTS vehicles and our AV system upgrade. So we've got POs in process for that. So you should see something coming through for that soon. But right now, everything is trending as expected overall. So happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments? Okay, and Lauren, thank you to you and your team for always improving how we present this information, how it's tracked, and just the continuous improvement process. If you want to learn more about all of that, check your email. I believe the memo was sent out in January. Okay, if you can't find it, maybe let Amanda know and we can resend it out. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. We will now move on to the original 7A, on-site wastewater treatment systems rec 43 with CAT. So this is the non-executive session part of this discussion.
All right. Good morning, Board. I am Kat McGarvey, the Environmental Health Division Director. Do you want to do have slides? Oh, they're right there. Okay. I just can't see. It's fine. Okay. So I wanted to come to you today and just continue the conversation here, continue to collaborate with you, provide education and awareness on our regulations so that we can work towards building a well-informed participation from our board for the purposes of adopting the new regulations that are proposed. So there is no action we're asking of you today. This is just information to support the regulation revision, provide education and awareness on some of these programs and how they do benefit and how we use them to work collaboratively with the community to be able to work through their property concerns and the constraints that we face in this county. So we'll start with some brief overview of some of the benefits that we do experience with the property sale and the operation and maintenance programs. And really what I want to highlight is, I believe Commissioner Geithner earlier, you talked about empowering homeowner or property owners, community members to make informed and educated decisions. And both of these programs really do that. They aren't intended to be restrictive. They are intended to be educational in nature, provide partnership, and give and empower our community members to make informed decisions. So they do long-term result in the reduced rates of repairs and reduced homeowner burden over the long-term aspects of the program and their system ownership. O&M specifically provides flexibility, reduces footprints of systems, and protects investments. Through early and routine inspections, it can lower long-term costs of system repairs. It also supports our rural growth while safeguarding our environment and particularly our groundwater resources. So property sales specifically, we'll jump into property sale first. For some context here, from January 2024 through December of 2025, we received 1,479 applications for property sale. 1.7% of those over that 2-year period involved a cesspool, and that is in reference to cesspools specifically. Of the 35,000 active OWTS systems in the county, 278 of them are located in that zip code 80819. So 0.8% of our active systems in El Paso County are located in Chipeta Park, Green Mountain Falls area. Not all of those in that area are cesspools. There are a good portion of them that are, but just for some reference points, I know that was a question that was asked last time, is what is the data in relative proportion? You look like you want to ask a question.
It's interesting because our county commissioner has mentioned that he believed that 40% of the systems up in, well, include Cascade, Chipeta Park, and Green Mountain Falls were cesspools.
So I don't have specific data which ones are cesspools. We're working through the 278 system records that we do have on file to identify those. Our historic record keeping did not routinely identify those, so it's not an easy pull, but we are working on that.
Okay.
So it's likely that that number could be fairly accurate.
And to be clear, though, this is for the whole county.
Correct. The 35,000 active systems is for the whole county. So those 278 located in that zip code.
Right, and you're asking for something different. It's of the ones in your area is what you need to get to, the 40 that you were told.
Yeah.
The metric that I would like to see preferable would be, okay, here's the number of total systems, here's how many of them are cesspools. There might be some that are other than septic, you know, some of the higher level. I'm not sure if we have any of those. And then tabular form, you know, and how many percents of those are fail, you know, have been identified as either not passing inspection or whatnot. That would be more, for me personally, that would be more beneficial if we had that tabular form. But like you say, you're not sure how many of them are actually cesspools. You can only go off of how many are actually have been inspected and passed.
Correct.
versus how many of them have been inspected and, okay, we got a
And
problem here.
within your area particularly, a lot of those homes are older and a lot
Yes.
predate our permitting requirements, which was 1966. So we may not have records of
Right.
many systems that exist up there.
Yeah, and that's part of the issue, is a lot of these places were built late 1800s to basically 1950. And so, yeah, there's,
So whatever you can do.
Yeah.
yeah.
In terms of what to pull.
Whatever.
We're pulling that data together, so
Okay.
I will have that for you by the next meeting.
I'd really appreciate that, because that, it's another data point,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, Vice President Salt, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a quick question. When we talk about these properties, are they all residential or are they residential and commercial?
This is representative of all residential and commercial.
Thank you.
Yep. So back to the 1,479 applications processed for purposes of property sale, 18.6% of those result in issuance of a notice of condition. And so a notice of condition, if there are required, if a component of the system is not functioning as intended, we issue a notice of condition either for further investigation and/or repair or replacement. This 18.6% is actually a decline from 2020, where in 2020, we had about a 26% notice of condition rate. So what this program has done is it really has helped educate homeowners, new buyers. What we find is most people are within their current owned home for a period of 2 to 5 years. So we're starting to see repeat sales. We're starting to see property owners who have gone through this process once, re-entering and going through this again. And so this is a lot of education that we have provided via this program that's helping homeowners use their systems more effectively and treat them better long-term, preventing the need for repairs and replacements.
Dr. Chan, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. I'd like to get back to the situation in some of these areas that have a lot of cesspools, or maybe doesn't have enough land to put in a conventional septic tank, both. Right now, from our previous meeting, I seem to remember that there are about 750 engineered systems that are inspected yearly. And you are still requiring yearly inspection for engineered systems. So if these older systems have to be replaced with engineered systems, what percentage of the systems within the county are you projecting will need that?
So let me see if I can reframe that to make sure that I understand your question. So you're asking if systems that have to be repaired or replaced through this, if they require engineering, what percentage of those are likely to require long-term operation and maintenance inspections?
Well, my understanding is that all engineered systems require yearly inspection. Is that true or no?
That is not true, no. So right now, our permitting rate is about 56% engineered systems to 44% conventional systems. So those 756 systems that are required and subject to operation and maintenance currently, yes, they do require engineering, but that is not representative of all systems that are engineered. So there's a variety of reasons engineering is required, the main one being soil type. And even if a system is and does require engineering, that doesn't automatically mean it's going to be subject to operation and maintenance.
Oh, and so what proportion of the systems within the county are you thinking will need ongoing inspection and maintenance, like the yearly inspection and maintenance?
We average about 10% of the systems that we inspect monthly that are subject to operation and maintenance after their installation. So we average about 10 to 12 systems on a monthly basis that enter operation and maintenance compared to our 600 permits a year that we issue. So it's actually a relatively small portion.
Okay, so you're saying that there's 35,000 systems and, you can project about 10% of those will be engineered to the degree that they require inspection and maintenance on a yearly basis?
I wouldn't say of the 35,000 because those are indicative and inclusive of existing and current systems. And so it's only those that are repaired. And so we issue between 400 and 600 permits annually. And of that, it roughly runs about 10%. I would have to go back and pull more data, but of the 35,000, only 756 currently are under operation and maintenance. To be fair, I can't do that math in my head. So whatever the 756 of the 35,000 systems, that's your percentage in total for
Well, that's the
operation and
current
maintenance.
percentage. I'm asking for a projected percentage because what is at issue is some of the items in 43 that where the county has the option of requiring certain actions. And so what I'm trying to determine is projected, because not only is it going to be a significant cost to a potential homeowner to have to either update or replace their system, and again, a prohibitively high cost to the homeowner. Um, but also going forward, the more systems that have to be inspected and maintained by the county, the more work that generates, the more burden it puts on the county, especially since the system has already been, um, in a way, vetted by being engineered and inspected at the time of installation. I understand that there's going to be some onus on the homeowner to maintain it to the degree that it doesn't fail. But again, I think that most homeowners don't want their system to fail. And for the most part, um, one would expect that a homeowner would take some personal responsibility for that. But even if only 10% of the systems within the county end up being um, requiring engineering to the degree that that you are currently requiring yearly inspection and maintenance, that's 3,500 systems, and um, that's going to require about 13 inspections a day, which is going to be a lot of work that, I mean, it may require a couple of extra FTEs.
So, I want to be clear here. We are not the ones conducting these inspections. They are done by a third party, by our industry members. So they're done by certified operation and maintenance inspectors, and we review them. However, I would like to take a moment here and share a story with you, a current one from a property owner. So Monday this week, I spent about an hour and a half at a property owner here in El Paso County up in Black Forest. They built their home. It's brand new. I think we finalized the system inspection in October of 2024. Their system has continually operated over operating levels in their tanks. It was within days of backing up into their home prior to the certified inspector being conducting their first initial inspection. And so, yes, we inspect these systems when they go in the ground and they're constructed. The engineer is also supposed to go out and inspect these systems. Sometimes they send a tech, sometimes they don't go. So we do what we can to inspect them. However, even if we approve an installation, that doesn't equate to operational effectiveness. And so this particular system is not getting effluent to the end of the soil treatment area. It has a substantially reduced above grade system. And so if it's not using the entirety of that soil treatment area, the likelihood that there's saturation and surfacing occurring in the immediate future increases substantially. And so what we were able to work through and talk through and help that homeowner problem solve a little bit is we found that through a camera inspection in the laterals, the installer did not drill the holes appropriately. And so the system is not pressurizing accordingly. And that's what these inspections are intended to help with, is making sure that they are functioning as intended. I can tell you over the course of since 2021, we've had more than 10 10 systems that were within days of backing up into their brand new finished basements in $1,000,000+ homes. And that's not good for anybody. So the benefits are really there. And there are a lot of things that we can do. This particular property has constraints because it's got several drainage easements on it and several drainage areas. So we had to find a way to fit a reduced footprint into this system. And so if we reduce the footprint size of the system, that means that there's a need to make sure these things function even more. Because if we're reducing system sizing, the time between failure and surfacing, or when it's operating, the time to failure substantially reduces too. So
Okay, so let me ask this question. It sounds like the example that you gave, there was an improper installation. So why wasn't the improper installation caught at the time of initial permitting and inspection?
So there's several pieces for that. And a lot of this, through this program, we've become better inspectors also. We've identified areas of opportunity for our inspectors. We've identified areas of opportunity to partner with our engineers in the county to help create areas of opportunity and better inspections. And so the laterals that are installed under the chambers where the holes were drilled improperly, that historically had been something that we relied on the engineers to evaluate and check, because that involves lifting chambers, that involves us touching installations and creates a liability on our part. And so we relied on the engineer for that. In this case, we found out the engineer didn't actually go out and inspect, and they just wrote a letter that said that everything was good. So there are lots of areas of opportunity here, and this, through operation and maintenance specifically, has helped increase our inspections, has helped us become better inspections, has helped us identify areas of opportunity where property owners, when we put these systems into use, they aren't always installed appropriately, and that we've been able to identify those areas and become better inspectors so that doesn't happen long term too. So
Okay, so what I'm asking here is, after having identified those areas of opportunity for improvement, it sounds like doing a very thorough inspection at the time of installation would obviate the need for ongoing repeated inspections.
not necessarily. I would not agree with that statement, only because these are mechanical components. These systems are highly sensitive to the use and how they are treated by the property owners. And so that can change over time. They really are not just a put it in the ground and forget it type of a system. The same way the municipalities have to have continual monitoring systems, this is essentially what we're doing on small scale properties. Mm-hmm. So it's not as simple as once it's in operation and it's inspected and now it's operable, it will continue to remain operable. That's just not the reality when you have mechanical components and moving parts.
Commissioner Geithner, go ahead.
Yeah, I would also say, I assume, all kinds of things, like, for example, ground saturation. Mm-hmm. Just for Dr. Chan, maybe to think about this too. I know from an infrastructure standpoint at the county, when we had extreme rains a couple of years ago, we ended up actually with an emergency declaration, even though probably most of the county would have been completely unaware that a lot of rain created ground saturation issues that created a lot of problems with our infrastructure. I would assume in very similar way, if you've got a system that is reliant on being able to move liquid through the ground, and the ground is highly saturated because of an abnormally wet spring or, one of those things, all of those things can, those conditions that we have no control over are changing those things all the time. So just another perspective on why it's probably not inspect once and it will be fine moving forward.
And that's a great point, because our groundwater table changes every 7 years also that's not something most people think about, but our groundwater table fluctuates, and in the spring it runs higher, so you're going to have higher saturated soils as runoff increases, maybe not so much this year, but in normal years. In the springtime, we have higher groundwater tables, but over the course of 7 years, the groundwater tables fluctuate, and that can impact these systems. Even in areas where you don't think there's groundwater, there's groundwater. So, all right, so moving on. Continuing with property sale and some inspection highlights here. Of those 1,479 applications we processed, there were 1,862 inspections associated with that series of applications. And so there's multiple inspections. Sometimes property owners choose to get a second opinion. Sometimes they just have follow-up inspections. And so that's why the inspection number is higher than the application number. 20% of these inspections, or 372 inspections, are connected to a notice of condition. And then 47%, or 180 of those inspections, of the 372 inspections, connected or indicated multiple conditions were found as part of the inspection process. And so that can be things that just recommend to help the longevity of the system, or they are things that the system is not functioning as intended. But in 47% of those inspections, we found multiple conditions associated with that. Some of the most common conditions, and I just want to preface this by these numbers may not add up to 100 because this is just kind of the most common version of that. So some of the common conditions we find are tank integrity and effluent levels. These are things that property owners aren't going to be able to monitor or see themselves because generally tanks are buried underground. Effluent levels within the tank, most property owners aren't going out and pulling their own lids off their septic tank because, again, they want to flush and forget it, where they're not going to go out and take a look at their tank. So we hear a lot, well, I never had any problems with it, but the inspection finds otherwise, and most tanks are concrete. They crumble over time under acidic conditions and anaerobic conditions within those tanks. Really, they can last a long time, but they do crumble and there is impacts, and they are not meant to last forever. Effluent levels being high, you're not necessarily going to see evidence of that until you have an inspection, and that can be anything from bellies or sagging in pipes, and from the home to the tank, from the tank to the soil treatment area, that can cause effluent levels to be high. Systems can be overused. We see frequently additions of bedrooms without regard for system sizing, which as you add more people, more water gets in there, and it doesn't handle it the same way. About 14% of conditions are associated with records and missing components, meaning components that just weren't inspected. So if we have a system that has a diverter valve on it, and it has a 1993 soil treatment area and a 2023 soil treatment area, they generally don't inspect the 1993 soil treatment area. So we have to ask for additional information for that, because it's still in use. So it still can be used, so we still want to know that it is operating as intended. And then about 8% of the conditions are associated with malfunctioning soil treatment areas. So whether those are surfacing, effluent, soil treatment areas that are just saturated and holding effluent, variety of conditions there. When we do issue an NOC, they are resolved by various ways. So 30% of our NOCs that are issued are resolved through a follow-up inspection, meaning it didn't require a permitted repair. There was a condition that we noted at time of inspection that we needed follow-up information on. The most common thing here is people who leave and go on vacation and come back and do 10 loads of laundry in one day, which you shouldn't do on a septic system in general, but they do that. And like one a day, like one or two a day. But they'll do a large load of laundry. It'll oversaturate the system because it's not intended to handle that surge flow. But if we go back in 60 days and look again, it's operating the way it should. So even though we issue a condition, that doesn't always mean that you're spending $10,000 to $30,000 on a repair. It could just mean we need more information. The 14% that require records or component inspections, they can do that. If systems that require operation and maintenance, we require an updated contract when the property is sold for the new buyer. Sometimes we're missing engineered documents that were never submitted to us, and so we're just looking to get those. So most of these are relatively easy, or a good portion of these are relatively easy and cost-effective to resolve these notices of condition. And then about 56% require a permitted repair. The majority of that are tank replacements, and those are about $10,000 to $15,000 in cost to repair a tank or to replace a tank. Most often the tank is replaced, it's not repaired. We do have a few industry members who will get into a tank after it's been pumped and do some patchwork, but that's not ideal. So the impacts of property sale is generally what we find and what we've experienced over the last 5 years specifically is we're getting a huge influx of people moving to our area. Most of those people come from municipal systems, or they have historically lived on municipal systems. So they really do lack the awareness of how to properly use an on-site system because you can't use it the same way. And so this is a good opportunity for us to provide a lot of education and prevent costly repairs down the road. Systems operating under reduced load conditions. So sometimes as couples age and they sell their home as they're aging out of being able to stay in their home for a variety of reasons, there may be only 1 or 2 people in there, but then a family of 5 moves in and that system doesn't handle the same way, because if you're operating under only 100 gallons per day and now your family of 5 moves in and all of a sudden you've got 500 gallons per day going to that, we need to be able to see that beforehand so that they can make informed and educated decisions. Anomalies in operating conditions, so like the laundry, those can be evaluated without immediate need for repair. And it really does reduce the burden under specific circumstances. So in our regulations this year and our proposed regulations, we were very thoughtful and intentional and know that there was going to be substantial concern around cesspools. So we worked with our industry stakeholders, including the state. We worked with a variety of installers, inspectors, engineers, and we've borrowed some language from Boulder because Boulder was one of the few counties that had clear exemptions in their regulations for property sale. And so we sort of mimicked that and have looked at proposed exceptions to the property sale process. So really, some of those off the top of my head are if you're selling it within your family, so if it's a family property and it's just being given or handed down, that's not going to require a property sale inspection. If you're adding or removing somebody to the title, that's a proposed exemption for the property sale. And I think there's a few others in there, but we were very thoughtful and intentional in trying to navigate this because we knew the impact was going to be, there was going to be an impact there.
Could we get that list?
Yeah, it's in
Or
your
is it
draft.
available?
It's in
okay.
the folder in the draft version of the regs.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So some of the real benefits here for property sale are really, it's an opportunity for us to empower the community members, empower the buyers, empower the property owners through education. So we're giving them educational disclosure for them to make an informed and educated decision. There are some impacts, meaning some conditions have to be repaired or replaced, but ultimately it gives them the ability to determine if that's something they want to take on or not. And it allows, at the time when money is most available through the property sale process, it allows those new buyers who are probably dumping every penny they have into purchasing their home to be able to wrap up those repairs in the cost of the loan. There's negotiation that can happen between the buyer and the seller for who's going to take care of that and how that's going to get repaired or replaced. So it's not solely on one person. It allows negotiation, it allows empowerment, it allows education to be the center and the focus of this. Yep.
Could I ask one question? Does this generally block the transaction until the repair is made, or it can be part of the contract that it will be done in the future, and then does that require an inspection?
So we are not a legal part of the closing documentation. This is a statutory requirement through the Clean Water Act within our regulations. But it's not a legal part of the closing documentation. So we do not block the transaction from occurring.
Okay.
The 90 days, when you get a notice of condition, you have 90 days And that 90 days is to take an action on it. So that can, if it was going to require a permit, you pull the permit, your permit's now good for a year. So we are going to work with everybody to get to repair, but we will not block a transaction.
Okay, and sometimes, I think what you're suggesting is sometimes the seller will repair it before the buyer
Proactively.
takes possession. Sometimes the buyer will say, give us some concessions in the price, and we'll
Yep.
deal with it ourselves. We want the house.
Correct.
Is there anything you want to add to that, or is that the general way it goes?
That's pretty much the general process that happens. I will tell you that sometimes the buyers don't get all the information. And the seller, like, for instance, we had one I talked to last week, and they gave her a $5,000 concession, and it turns out she's going to need an entire new field. And so that $5,000 concession didn't help her because she didn't have this information on the front end.
How much does a new field, just ballpark range?
Started about 40,000, depending, 30 to
Okay.
40,000
Yeah.
starting.
Yeah.
I've seen them as high as 500,000, but that's commercial. But residential, you're probably in the $40,000 to $70,000 range.
I don't want anyone else to complain about CSU rates. in the city.
So if I could address part of your question, what I've been observing up in my area is most of the sellers are taking care of it before the sale. They're either getting inspections or whatnot, because more of the buyers coming into our area are realizing that, oh, we don't have a city sewer system, and they're actually coming in and actually looking for that up front.
And, oh,
I just want to make sure that I'm kind of understanding the program and also the concerns that have been brought up previously. So I'm going to try to explain how I'm viewing it, and you can tell me if I've got it wrong. So essentially, what I'm seeing is that the program that we've opted into is requiring that on transfer in the event that you have a family who has a home, has a cesspool. They are able to continue with that cesspool up and until it becomes problematic, right? The problem, as has been brought forward, is that the sale triggers that inspection. So even if it's not problematic, now it's on the radar and has to be dealt with. If the family was not moving and it wasn't surfacing, it wasn't creating an environmental hazard. So the opt-in is creating a situation where cesspools that are functioning okay are now being forced into this kind of compliance model because of that, right? Am I kind of getting that? So understanding the desire to protect consumers, I guess I have a question that maybe we want to ask for later, and that's fine. I don't want to put you necessarily on the spot today, but is there a way for us to get to, without opting into this program that is causing that issue, is there another way to get to a more of an optional component? So when you go and buy your home, if you don't hire an inspector, usually you do if you have a mortgage company, right? But if you don't have an inspector that comes in and doesn't notice there are other types of work that can be done that are not permitted, plumbing, all things that homeowners could be doing and not permitting, and not being aware of. But you have home inspectors, you have these processes. Mortgage companies usually require them, obviously, to protect their investment. Is there a way to make it more similar to the other ways that building operates so that there is an opportunity for buyers to get that inspection? I mean, maybe there's an optional program that you can reach out to. And I guess what I'm just trying to get to is that does seem like a very unfair situation. That's not our decision to make. The state has made that decision, but we do get the opportunity to decide whether we want to opt in. So can we get to the good things of that opting in without opting in, so that we don't hit that problem? And I guess that's the big question that I have, and I just don't know if there's a way to get to that. That's usually when I look at the attorneys and say, can you find some magic somewhere? Is there a way to create some way to get to both of those things without having that? And I don't know if there is, but that's just where my thinking is at this moment.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there could be a separate county regulation.
Again,
so I have spoke with the state. He did say that there is an option to consider a special district. Again, I defer to Lori, and we'd probably have to discuss what that would look like. But there is an option for that. I think, honestly, I think that the impact is going to be reduced and negated with the variance process, with the exceptions that we put into the regulation, the proposed, this is all proposed, right? So none of this is in effect right now. I want to be clear about that, but these are all proposed things. And so I am confident, and I will just say I've spoken with so many people from Green Mountain Falls, and so many people have come down and we've talked through a lot of things. And the common factor there is their concern is they want to transfer the home to their grandkids within their family. And that is the majority of the people that I've talked to about this, and we have an exception for that. And so I really do, I am very confident that the work that we've done and the intentional work we've done around this program will negate the greater portion of the concern. And then the rest of the concern can be resolved most often by the placement of a septic tank prior to the cesspool. And that is a much reduced cost to that. In our variance document, we talked a little bit about that in the last executive session. With cesspools, we've built in proposed if there's no access, if it's seasonality. And those are things that we would consider variances for, or ask you as the board to consider a variance for. And so you guys do have control in a lot of that aspect and way too. And Lori, correct me if I said anything that you have major heartburn over, but.
Yeah, just FYI, those are the vocal ones. There's
Yeah.
a lot of places up
There
there
are.
that you wonder how in the world they've ever been doing anything. I think there's 3 homes on one cesspool.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And it's like, and I have people coming in asking about purchasing, as mayor, they come in and they ask me about purchasing properties, and the first thing out of my mouth is say, first, look at get it surveyed, and then 2, look at the wastewater. But yeah, there's at least one location where there are 3 homes on one cesspool, and it's like, now what? So, yeah.
And the hill
they're
across
on
from
a
your
s-
pond
they're on
area,
the
there's
side
about
a
9 of them in
mountain,
there.
They're on the side of a mountain, we're surrounded by boulders, and, yeah.
We have to be very creative with properties up there, and we always have been. Well, and so we've been able to find a lot of, and I have some examples later in the presentation, if we can get there or not.
I think we have 2 more slides.
Yeah.
With our timing constraints, so, yep.
So transitioning into operation and maintenance, we talked a little bit about that earlier through Dr. Chan's questions, but 757 OWTS systems of the 35,000 right now, so about 2% of the systems currently are subject to operation and maintenance. Like I said, we add about anywhere from, I will say 8 to 12. It's been a little while since I looked at that number, so I will get clarity on that number for you next time. But we add about 8 to 12 systems monthly that would be subject to operation and maintenance. These inspections that are annually required, they do also double and satisfy as the property sale inspection. So if somebody is on an operation maintenance contract and they are routinely having their systems inspected, we would take that inspection to satisfy their property sale requirement, so they're not being asked to pay for another or additional inspection. These inspections are higher, they're more involved, more in depth, so they provide a little bit more information than the property sale inspection does most often. So these are, we've found ways to make that work for both programs. Just sticking with property sale really quick because they do connect, about 276 notices of condition issued over the 2024 to 2025 period. 50 of those required O&M, but were lacking contracts, and those were identified conditions at time of sale. So systems that require O&M that did not have an active contract, we were able to get those at time of property sale. So we're working with both programs simultaneously here. O&M does prevent costly backups and failures. We've talked about some of those examples. And especially early in the program, we found while we would love to trust everybody, and everybody does all the things right all the time. There's a reason our role exists. And we found early in the program that we had installers who were not appropriately installing components, and we found that through inspections. So things like automatic distribution valves, they have a mechanism inside that rotates each zone. And so similar to your sprinkler system, every time one zone comes on, there's a mechanism that rotates. It's the same concept. A lot of our installers were removing those because they were sources of problems and they didn't want to get callbacks. So they would just take that out, and then the system would just function as a gravity-fed system or a drip dispersal system and not necessarily as pressure distribution. And so those are some of the things that they would call it, or they would be backing up into the home, or they would not be functioning properly. And those are some of the things that I'm saying that like have made us better inspectors too, and understanding how the system functions and how that works and what we should be looking for. And the operation maintenance program is probably one of the most important ones that we have, because it's what gives us the ability to be flexible and work with system sizing restraints and conditions. So we have a lot of properties that are up against boulders, that have high rock content, that have bedrock, have groundwater, have drainage easements, are small properties. And really, if we don't have the flexibility to be able to reduce system sizing, reduce setbacks, it could mean that some properties become uninhabitable because we can't fit an appropriate system on there. So for example, so I have a couple of examples here. Limited space properties. A good portion of these systems are reduced by almost 50% in their system sizing. So if you think of clay soil, it's very tight. There's small interstitial spaces, which means it's going to take more area for water to be able to absorb into that soil. So most systems that go into clay soil are going to be 3,000 plus square feet. With the operation and maintenance and the use of pressure distribution or higher level treatment, we're able to reduce those to 1,500 square feet, to 1,000 to 1,500 square feet. So property owners are able to get a substantial portion of their property back and usable. Because once these systems go in, you really can't put anything else on top of it. You can't use that area for anything other than the absorption of effluent, because of the concerns that come with that. So a lot of properties in the Cascade Green Mountain Falls area. Park Vista is also another area that is still on on-site systems, even though they have some city utilities in that area, but their zoning still allows us to have septic systems in those areas. When you're down to half-acre lots, 1 acre lots, it's really hard to get a conforming system in, or a gravity-fed system in, or 3,000 square feet of soil treatment area in. And so this program really allows us to be flexible and help reduce those system sizings and those footprints so that we can keep people in their homes. Another example where this program has been beneficial is a private property in Black Forest who has an event center that they do weddings on their property. They went through all the zoning and everything for that. They did do a system expansion. They did put a system in. However, their business has really taken off. They're getting requests for higher capacity weddings, but their system is only sized for so many, so they have to limit guests to that number. However, with operation and maintenance, we could allow them to explore the use of luxury portable restrooms, which are restrooms that are on a trailer. They contain a sink, they have stalls. It's more than just your blue porta potty that you see at a construction site. So we can monitor this and have them be able to use through O&M. We're not going to require them to expand their system further to support that. We can use alternatives to allow them to bring this on and off the property in order to support their increased use and increased business. Wines of Colorado is another one. They have no space, and they're right next to the creek, and everything around them is parking to them. And so their system is actually installed next to their building where people park, and routinely they're repairing the system probably once every 3 to 5 years, because as people park on it, it breaks. The compaction impacts their system. And so through O&M and the use of advanced treatment, we can find ways to have a deeper installation and there's less impact to breaking. We can treat that effluent so that it protects the creek that runs right next to it as well. And that is a super important aspect of this program also. And then the Black Forest Shopping Center. So this is an area I took Vice President Salt and the commissioners to. This particular shopping center has had several turnovers of office space, restaurants, brewery, and we were not involved in that process. So as the landlord allows tenants to come and go, it is without regard for their system. What happened is the brewery came in, they started brewing, all that waste went into their wastewater treatment system, their system failed and was leaking into the drainage easement behind their property after 5 years. And then, so through operation and maintenance, they now have a new system. It is functioning, it's doing well. It's all being monitored through operation and maintenance. It has a very expensive advanced treatment unit on it. And now through their operation and maintenance, they'll have to monitor what they're allowing to come in, make sure that they're not going to exceed that usage. And that allows us to be part of that and help them identify suitable tenants that's not going to impact their system long term. That system costs, I think, almost $1 million, somewhere between $700,000 and $1 million. And so it's a super important investment for them to be able to protect, because that's not easy to just put in the ground, especially in an area like Black Forest. That particular system also was what we call a rip and replace, meaning the area that the existing system that failed was in had to be completely dug out, new soil brought in, and installation in the same exact area because there was nowhere else to install that. And the only way that we can work through that is by having operation and maintenance and having treatment and appropriate media brought in to do that. So these are just some of the examples in the way that we creatively use this program to be able to help support community members, property owners, business members, and all the things that come with owning an on-site wastewater treatment system. So yes, these are optional regulatory programs, but it is important to balance both oversight with community impact, and we understand that, and we use these programs to do that. They are tailored to support and reduce burden on homeowners. So through proposed, right now we have a bunch of proposals out there to reduce burden on homeowners and to help support prospective buyers. Proactive education, routine maintenance, through O&M, minimize costly repairs and community impact. And so when you're talking about, our mission here at Public Health is prevention. And so this really aligns with that prevention mechanism. And so if they're putting $40,000 plus into the ground as an investment, this helps them maintain that long term. And these systems, well, again, we haven't been doing this for more than 30 years, but with this, we do see minimized costs or proactive responses to failures, and that can be corrected before it gets to a point where it can no longer be corrected and a new system is necessary. I think the most important thing is that we get to keep homeowners in their homes. And so flexibility in system design supports diverse property needs. We, luckily in El Paso County, because we've had these programs and because we have the ability to really work with homeowners, we haven't had a need to come before the board and do a ton of variances because we can use the regulations to get there without the need for that variance. We haven't had to tell anybody that they can't be in their home any longer, where other counties have had to do that because they don't have the ability to work with homeowners or because systems are in failure and they don't have the ability to put a new system in. And so we have never had to do that. In my time here, we have not had to do that. And it really does protect the public health and the environmental sustainability. So as we talked earlier, groundwater sources change, they fluctuate. We do get heavy rains in spring, and we saw several systems flooded at that time that Commissioner Geithner had mentioned as well. So really, I'll just leave you with this. Through proactive oversight, maintenance, and our inspection programs, we get to uphold the public health mission of preventing potential risks and protecting community resources while also empowering and educating our community members to make the most informed decisions that they can make.
Okay. I gotta say, I'm very intrigued by the special district potential, which could potentially get rid of the bad piece, which I believe is government overreach, extreme government overreach, to be quite honest. But yet keep all the good. So I'm very intrigued by that potential option.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Chan?
Okay. So you wrapped up by talking about the impact on homeowners and the concern for homeowners, but all of your examples were commercial entities. So is there a clear delineation between requirements for commercial entities, even if they're, for example, a homeowner who has an Airbnb? Normally, it would be like a 3-bedroom, with 4 family members, but they're packing 10 people into it, or the larger venues, like the wedding venues that you cited. So I think that our primary concern really is the larger public, which is homeowners. So what is the difference between requirements for commercial enterprises and homeowners?
So there's really no difference. The regulations apply the same to both commercial and residential. The difference comes in design parameters and design aspects. And so what the design considerations are and how diluted the effluent can be before it is distributed into the soil. But most of the last 3 examples were commercial based, but really the impact to property owners is that limited site and limited spacing constraints that I initially talked about before. And so the ability to be creative in finding ways to reduce system sizing within the regulations without coming for a variance through use of operation and maintenance, through use of regular inspections, those are things that we've been able to do with property owners who have small systems or small lots. And so really the big impact for property owners is limited space and limited sizing and being able to maximize the use of their property.
And then in terms of the differences in ground saturation, let's say there's a home that sells and let's say it sells in June or July, and you do an inspection. What relevance does that inspection have when it's, maybe the driest part of the year to 2 months later when the monsoons are in effect? When you do an inspection, are you able to say that this system will stand up to a more saturated ground than the conditions that you're seeing during the inspection?
So I do think that this goes back to regulations also. So yes, these inspections are moments in time, and they can be conducted in the winter, they can be conducted in the summer, and so there are varying conditions there. However, the way the inspection is conducted, especially if people are remaining in the home and the system is continually used and under continual use, there is a flow test that is conducted. So they do run a certain amount of water through that system at the time of inspection, A, to make sure each component is moving the water the way it should, but B, also to make sure that it is accepting the effluent in the soil treatment area also. So yes, there are things that happen during that inspection that do translate to what you're talking about and giving that balance of, yes, it's a dry time, no, it's a wet time. But also within the regulations themselves, there is certain factors considered. So for example, a 3-bedroom home requires 450 gallons per day in design flow. And that most people don't use 450 gallons per day of water. However, some people well exceed that. And so that is also designed to account for seasonal saturation. That is also designed to account for snow melt, rainwater, all the things that can happen because these are outside in the elements and within the soil. So the design piece combined with the inspection is what tells us that that system is functioning as it intended.
Okay, so the answer to that is yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there are components of the inspection that can demonstrate whether or not that system will work under all operating conditions.
Okay, and is that from the design or that's from the inspection?
It comes from both. So
Okay.
it's the design and time of construction, it's accounted for there. And then under normal operating conditions, it's again tested to make sure that it remains functioning as intended.
Okay.
There is no guarantee that it will always operate or that any condition may or may not impact it. Nobody will ever be able to give that guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions, final questions for Kat? Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Just comment, thank you. Really interesting and good to understand where the regulations or the program allows us to actually have flexibility for our community. So thank you.
Thank you for being responsive to the board, and I think we're getting there. So, in the interest of time, I know our county commissioners have to leave in like 4 minutes. I would propose that we move the originally scheduled 8A executive session to next month. And can you help us, Lori, on how to deal with that? Do we need a motion for that before we adjourn?
I think that's fine. If that's your desire, it would take a motion
Okay.
just to continue it to the next meeting. Just food for thought, whether you still find that necessary. The remaining topics left over from last time are the same topics that Kat just covered. So if you do want to go into executive session for confidential legal advice about, and again, it's narrowed to what you can and can't do, not what you should or shouldn't do. If you still feel you need that, then by all means, please continue it, or you can even think about it between now and then, but it's the same topics that you just heard.
I would feel better moving it to next month and keeping it on the agenda for now.
So we would need a motion to continue to the next meeting, a second and a vote.
Is there a motion?
Mayor Dixon also move.
Carrie Geithner, second.
All those in favor of moving 8A to next month to continue the discussion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion passes. We'll put that on the agenda for next month. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 11:26. Thank you all.